So gonna go to, well, first, it was a fantastic first act. I think that was the most of a first act we've ever had. And so, which is fantastic because there's so many good things that we were able to touch on there. So going into life after your playing career, you had a little bit of a unique situation because you had already experienced what it was like to not have tennis at an earlier age than having a second chance to go to college and play tennis.
Mm-hmm.
Did you feel much of a difference between when you got injured and thought you were going to be done versus when you got to the end of your career at Kentucky and then knew you were when you knew your career was going to be over?
I think when I knew my career was going to be over, we was actually at Michigan. And my career ended at Michigan. NCAA tournament at Michigan. So that's when my career ended, and I actually was in a third set, so I didn't even get to finish like my last match. But I remember like all the freshmen coming over to me, just like crying and being like, "Kirsten, like we let you down. Like this is your last match, and you didn't get to finish. You were winning. Like." They were just like sobbing, and I remember just like receiving them, and I was like, guys, like chill, like it's gonna be okay. Like, sorry, here's my puppy. It's gonna go, come on, Dave, go somewhere else. Okay, it's gonna be okay, you know. And I remember like sitting in the locker room by myself, like after the match, and just like taking it all in of like this is my last college match, but just feeling like really accomplished and very happy and at peace with what it meant to be my last college match. So. I think like I didn't cry, I wasn't upset. Like they were all like hysterical, like, "Oh my gosh, it's our last match, and we let you down as a senior." And I'm like, guys, like this is. And I remember like getting on the bus and like going to eat. I remember just feeling like so happy. Like I was like on cloud nine because I was just like, if this is the end of my college career, I'm very happy with my college career. Like I have no like regrets,
Yeah.
So and then I would say what followed really I only took a summer, 3 months. I got a retail job, worked at Lululemon, and kind of did nothing, hung out in Lexington for a little bit. Then I started my master's like right away. And then I was a GA teaching there. So that was like a lot of responsibility too. And then I was interning for the athletic department. And so I like dove like right back into like just work and being very involved. And I interned for the athletic department, was working with like 3 different teams. I was honestly for that 1 year doing everything, like anything I can get my hands on in the athletic department, like I was doing to get experience for my resume. And so dove into that, working on my master's. I was living in Lexington still. My teammate, my best friend, she was still had 1 more year at Kentucky. So I was still like commuting, going to there, coming back. So still very much involved in like the college life, I guess, if that makes sense. And then when she graduated, I moved to Richmond for my last year. But I feel like I was always just on to the next thing, and never really took time to like ponder like, okay, like what am I doing next? It was like I had already lined up, after like kind of what I was going to do next, and it just kept like segueing into other things.
Do you think that your experience when you were 15 helped prepare you for when you finally were done with tennis?
Absolutely, because I think I didn't spend the entire 4 years at Kentucky only thinking about the sport of tennis. I was always thinking about, okay, like what's like how else do you plan to use me outside of the sport?
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So in the time that after you retired, what was the feeling like having your life and your schedule not revolve around tennis all the time?
It was amazing. I like I was so happy. Like I mean, I feel like it was like I can't explain it, but like I was remember just like literally like just waking up and doing like going to my thing. I joined like a gym. I joined like Orange Theory and was like doing like workouts, and I was still like training with the athletes and like the weight and like the gym, like what I mean. I was still like going hitting up like strength and conditioning coaches and getting workouts, and I was just like kind of like a floater because obviously I was living in Lexington but not in the program, and so I was still very much kind of like floating around. But I remember just like, feeling this immense, I feel of just like, oh my goodness, like my time is my own now. Like, this is awesome. Like, this is great, and even too much. So like, I remember like I honestly went the complete opposite and had a horrible like routine, like where I was like going to bed way too late and then waking up with like, and I was eating. So I think I put on probably like 10 to 15 pounds in like that 3 months. Cause I was just like eating and having like a blast and just whatever. But, and then, I would say yeah, for me, I just felt, yeah, it felt amazing to like to have some time off and not feel this responsibility of team and the responsibility of carrying teams on your back or people, or it just felt kind of like it was just
Hmm.
me. I take care of me now, and,
Yeah.
and that's all I need to focus on. So it was nice for me.
Yeah, no, I think we all can relate to that. And I was talking to Sydney, my fiance, and she said that, well, I was telling her that in the time after I retired, I feel like I was burnt out on being one of the guys that was always on top of things, always disciplined and doing things that all my friends either weren't doing, or I wasn't able to do a lot of things that they were doing. And so I wanted to get a taste of what it felt like to kind of relax a little bit. But
Yeah.
then that in turn, it didn't completely derail me, but it's caused a lot of like, okay, what do I do now? And not as much certainty and clarity in the direction that I'm going, and more kind of drifting through kind of the days and letting my schedule kind of be made for me and my routine be made for me. So definitely can relate to that a lot. So during that transition out of playing tennis, and then, like you said, you worked 3 months in retail, and then you went pretty much directly back into the world of tennis, but in a different capacity on the other side of things. Was there something or someone that helped you in that transition to kind of know that that was what you wanted to do?
So I think my trip to Ethiopia is what the athletic or the associate athletic director that took me to Ethiopia, he's the one that really created this spark in me of I want to defer going to med school to be a surgeon,
Mm-hmm.
and I actually want to work with the age group of 18 to 22 like year old adults, and I want to work in the athletic space.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the time we have at Kentucky, you have like a life skills coordinator, and they basically, their job is to help student athletes transition. So I remember
Mm.
like knocking on his door and being like, hey, like I know I'm on this track, but like I think I want to go to like grad school and like do sports administration. And
Mm.
he was like, I know a program, I know the director, I'll put you in touch with her. And so so from like that period of time of coming back from Africa, kind of wanting to shift, him having the resources and connection, I met with her, and she was like, it's funny because I was all full, like had no positions, but then the one person just dropped out of the program, so I now have a position. And I was like, oh, like so it was kind of like
Mm-hmm.
a no brainer. And at the time I had got an NCAA scholarship, post grad scholarship, and I got an SEC post grad scholarship as well. So for
Nice.
me, it was like affordable. I can pay for this. I can afford this. I'm not having
Mm-hmm.
to, take out debt. I can teach. I can be a GA. I can, offset some of the cost.
Mm-hmm.
And so it kind of naturally evolved with me going to grad school. And then once I got into grad school, I remember I took my first day on campus. I walked over to the athletic department and just like introduced myself and was just like, hey, I'm here. I want to work in athletics. Like, is there any intern opportunities available for me? And
Mm.
they were like, yes, because I mean, we're a mid-major school. Like, of course, like
Yeah.
free help is amazing. You know what I mean? So, and I remember meeting with some of the people there, and they kind of just said, okay, we don't have a student athlete development. We don't have anything with student athlete development. This is what you're passionate in. So for that entire like first year and a half, I ran the entire like student athlete development part for the academic like athletic place.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and then I was working in marketing. I was the person that was like on the field during football games, helping put on like events. I was, hosting their end of the year banquet.
Mm-hmm.
I was working with like at-risk teams for like football, baseball, and soccer. So I was meeting with athletes. And so I just like immersed myself into like the world of like athletics, academic success for like student athletes. And so I met like a
Mm-hmm.
bunch of different athletes, and they would come and sit and just like dump their lives on me and like, oh, this is going on and that's going on. And then like, so it was,
Yeah.
for me, it was like, okay, I love this. This is what I envisioned myself doing. And this is why I chose to be in athletics. So it very much,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have an experience of like, oh, I did all this and I don't like it. It was
Yeah.
like, oh, like this is so aligned with what I was hoping this experience would be like,
Mm-hmm.
working in athletics. And so I also, at the time wasn't planning on coaching at all. And so I started interviewing for different positions in student athlete success, in academics, and with that. And I remember like my first three interviews, one was like with Wisconsin, one was with Texas A&M. And so like, and I remember like going through the interview process. I think the other one was like, a school in Missouri or something like that. But I remember going through this process and just like loving this idea of, oh, like working in this space is going to be like so cool. And so it felt very like reaffirming that I had made the right choice.
Yeah.
To forgo med school and not do that. It felt very much like, yes, I'm on the right path. This is where I need to be. And I think on the flip side, I was very fortunate. I think a lot of people struggle with, I went to school for 4 years, got this degree, I'm doing this degree. And because my dad, for example, went to school for 4 years, was an electrical engineer, started doing that and was like, absolutely not. And so he completely switched.
Yeah.
Now he's like a financial advisor, you know what I mean? So it's just like, and I feel, and my mom went to school, she was a metallurgical engineer, and she was like, I loved every second of everything
Dang.
that I did. You know what I mean? So it's just like, and I feel like I was lucky, but I feel like for most people, maybe they think they have this awesome, they go to school to do this one thing, and then they start doing, they're like, yeah, like, I want to do something different, you know?
Yeah.
So I was very fortunate in that, like, you know, it very much, my experiences were very confirming to me that I had made the right choice to completely pivot my career, like as a senior in college.
That's awesome. It's kind of cool that, you know, you got to see it from both parents, different avenues, right? Like your mom knew what she wanted to do and it came true. And on the flip side, I think like your dad's story kind of more relates to what you did. And I think maybe, you know, that decision may be more difficult if your dad hadn't done what he did. And it kind of worked out for him. So I think that's an awesome little tidbit to your story. As you were, you know, kind of transitioning, what was the best and what was kind of the most difficult aspect to handle as you were kind of going through that transition phase?
Paying my bills. Kentucky paid very well. I think I went from like, you know, cost of living check, scholarship check, housing check, return your books, get a check, free food every day. You know, all you like the dining hall, you go there, there's like buffets of like salad bar, steaks, chicken, carbs, like pasta bar. I mean, it's just like, and then now you're like, I'm paying for grad school. I'm paying for my rent. I'm, you know, and I'm like, you know, going to the grocery store, I can't buy, like you're like on a budget. So I think that that was like the biggest, that was a huge wake up call. And I was like, shoot, okay, I actually like, you know, my life is kind of sad right now because I don't have money. But so that was like the biggest wake up call, I think, from transitioning. And then also too, just student athlete, you know, you're pretty much already set, but like but I feel like when I was getting my master's, the initiative that you have to take is like 10 times more to be successful. And no one is making the introduction for you. No one is vouching for you. No one's being like, oh, that's a student athlete at Kentucky, they're good or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, or that's, you know, you're not getting freebies. You're not getting handouts. Like you are a nobody having to make a career, make a way for you. And I think like we're so catered to as student athletes, and I think going into that program you're not catered to. Like you have to do everything on your own. No more tutors, no more support, no more like walking in the, hey, academic advisor, like what classes am I taking this semester, like you know what I mean? Like it's just like the babying is gone and you really have to take ownership of your success. And I think that was something that quickly I had to learn. Like I had to go knock on people's doors. I had to go drop my resume. I had to like really put myself out there to get opportunities to come back in my direction. And I think when you're at Kentucky, you're in this bubble of just like, you know, everything. You need a massage, this guy shows up. You need this, like, you know what I mean? It's just like very much like all right there. The resources are all right there for you. So one, being broke and really having to take ownership of my success and what opportunities come down the pipeline, because no one was going to hand those like to me.
Yeah, those are two really big adjustments that you have to make, especially when you're at a school like Kentucky that has as many resources as they do and is much structured to put you in a position to succeed as a student athlete. And then once it's gone, especially if you're not used to it, then it can smack you in the face pretty hard, pretty immediately. So definitely know what you mean. Would you say that was the biggest adjustment you had to make in retirement? Like
not being catered to as much.
Or was there another adjustment they had to make in retirement that was a little bit bigger? So, like, for example, one of the things that I had to adjust to was not being able to perform athletically as well as I did when I was committing as much time during the day to training and then weightlifting and then conditioning. And obviously, when you're not committing that much time to it, performance is going to go down. But like,
Yeah.
I still want to play well when I'm playing pickup, but it sucks not being able to do everything that I used to be able to do because I'm not training 3 hours a day. So that's an example of an adjustment that I had to make. So is there anything similar to that you had to adjust to?
It's a really good question. I'm trying to think of something that is like stood out to me, and obviously this was like how many years ago? 16 to like almost like 8 7 8 years ago. But I think, and this could be like super superficial, but I think having to, like, not having something to fall back on or like ride the coattails of Kirsten Lewis, UK athlete,
Mm-hmm.
this and that,
Yeah.
kind of like this when I walk into a space, like I actually, for Lululemon, I remember when I was interviewing for the position, it was like me and like 10 other girls,
Mm-hmm.
and they do like a lot of like group like sessions or like a group interviews before they like narrow it all down. It's very interesting. So like, I
Mm-hmm.
remember like walking to the room and there were like 10 to a bunch of people who I thought were, like, wow, this is like competition. This is interesting because you all see each other. They know they're interviewing with like one position or whatever.
Yeah.
And I remember like sitting at the table and they were all like, because like 3 of the 4 like directors were there, I guess, like the hiring managers. And so they were all sitting at the table just kind of like trying to grab attention of like, I'm this, I'm that, I do this, I do that, like trying to stand out. So I think the whole point of this group thing was who stands out. And so I remember like kind of looking around and being like, I just like I don't know how to like insert myself here. I don't really know what to say. So I actually didn't really say much the entire night. And I remember they turned to me and they're like, Kirsten, like you haven't said much. Like, can you tell us a little about who you are and what you do? And I started just like sharing my story. And I remember like the whole table just gets like extremely quiet. Everyone's just like listening to what I'm saying. And I remember just like kind of like shutting up and like kind of like, oh, that's it. Like, my chance to talk, I finally got, whatever. And so
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know what I said, but I remember we all wrapped, and I didn't speak much for the night, but we all wrapped, and one of the managers pulled me aside and said, oh, by the way, like, you're an athlete at Kentucky. We already know we're hiring you. Just FYI, just go through this process. And like, you know what I mean? Like, so it was just like, oh, okay. So I literally had to spend the onboarding process, like knowing I had a job, but that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing where it's just like, I think sometimes we get very like, maybe like prideful, or we get kind of like an ego boost of like, what we're wearing and who we represent and all the different things like that. And I think
Yeah.
like there's a deflation period that happens.
Mm-hmm.
And I think watching my dad kind of never go through a deflation period, like growing up, it was kind of like, okay, like, he very much never has experienced in the state of Alabama, like a deflation period of like, no one knows who he is. You know what I mean? So like, I think
Yeah.
like, it was kind of like a moment of like, deflation, of, okay, like starting over. And then kind of back to the identity piece, like being an athlete at Kentucky is not my identity like anymore. So like, what am I going to lead off of? Like, how am I going to introduce myself to people? Like, what person am I going to present without the UK athlete, without the this and that?
Yeah. Because when you were at Kentucky, your introduction was already there.
Yeah.
You didn't have to say anything.
Exactly.
And then, yeah. But when people are not in that same space, then
Exactly.
it's like, okay, cool, you played at Kentucky. Like, what else?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
No, definitely know
And-
what you mean.
And that's how I got the position coaching at, the school, my master's, because the coach, the GA left like randomly, like mid-season. And so, or left at some point, and they're like, we don't have anyone. And I remember the tennis team, they said, we told our coach, oh, there is a tennis athlete from UK that's in the athletic department interning. Like, we should ask her. Like, so even that like got me, a opportunity to coach, you know what I mean? So it's
For
just
sure.
like, so it's very interesting, this idea. And even now, like, now fast forward like 8 years, like like no one knows I went to the University of Kentucky. No one really cares. No one even asks. Like if
Yeah.
I see like a UK shirt, I'm like, oh, go Cats! Like you know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
I don't wear my UK stuff. It's all in the attic, packed away. Like you know what I mean? Like so, it's just like I don't. I feel like if you just observe me for like a couple months, like you would never know that I went to Kentucky. Other than like I might watch an occasional game or whatever. But I think it's very like insignificant now. But I think when you're like just getting out, you're like kind of like puffed up, like, oh, like, I did all these cool things. Like, look,
For
I'm
sure.
awesome. I'm great. Like, of course you're going to like me. And now it's just like, I'm Kirsten.
Hmm.
Nice to meet you. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
So as you were kind of going through that process a little bit, was there something, how did you try to replace the tennis or the athlete aspect of your life and identity? Was there something that you kind of inserted or something that you started doing to kind of fill that void a little
yep,
bit?
I fell in love with the gym.
Mm.
Like, and I started training for like Ninja Warrior. So like
Nice.
I was like an absolute. I mean, Keaton sees me now. Like I'm very like I'm not. I don't look like I'm really much of anything,
You're
but
way too
like
humble. It's
but
not true
but
at all.
back then and so like I was absolutely like jacked. Like I could do like push-ups like 50 like just I mean I was just like and I was doing gymnastics, so I got one of the cheerleaders to teach me gymnastics so I could learn flips and do all these different things.
Nice.
I could like walk on my hands down the football field. Like I was just like an absolute like athletic like and actually it's funny because one of the guys that I dated don't you can cut well I think I'll listen to it but one of the guys that I dated in during that period of time actually like he said he really only noticed me because he always said like my workouts were just absolutely insane. Like, and I was like, yeah,
Nice.
that was me. Like, I just went through this like very like tunnel vision, like working out a lot, like 2 hours at the gym. But then also I met a lot of cool people, and it was fun to hang out at the gym and just talk to people and meet people. So I was like a gym head. Like I would go to
Yeah.
class, do my stuff, and just go to the gym and hang out for like 2 hours and just like kick it with people at the gym. But
Hmm.
that's kind of where I put my athletic skills. I never really like lost them. I just kept training even. And I actually was probably in some of the best shape even at like post college
Hmm.
during that period of time.
Yeah, that's a natural progression because it's something in the same vein of what you know. And especially you and your family are insanely athletic. Like, Matthew, don't let her fool you. Like, her sister, Kristen, like, she said that, well, and she's in the same small group as we are. So she's the one that we've actually seen, but like all of her siblings, they look like they go to the gym 3 hours a day, 24/7, 365, and then a lot of times they'll take a year off the gym and look like that way. So
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
it was a natural progression and an outlet that was similar to what you knew, and you had the ability to do some really cool stuff with it. So it feels like it was a older version of when you first discovered tennis because you had the abilities with tennis and you kind of unlocked and figured out, oh, I'm good at this. And then obviously if I was doing a bunch of gymnastics and was really good at walking on my hands across an entire 100-yard football field, I'd want to do more of that too because that feels really cool.
Yeah.
Is
So.
there anything athletically that you failed at? Just out of curiosity.
Oh, absolutely,
There's the
absolutely. I
question.
cannot play basketball.
I don't know. I
I
don't know.
cannot. I cannot play basketball to save my life. But everyone always jokes and say, "Kirsten, you're only gifted at tennis." I would say, like, I can do most things. Like in my grad school, I play a little bit of, like volleyball, like intramural volleyball, things like
Hmm.
that. But I would say I struggle at a lot of different things. But I would say that I'm always the first person to like hop up and try. Like I
Mm.
could say 100% I can throw a football like better than most, like probably like 99% of guys out there. Like my
Nice.
dad taught me how to throw a football. Like that was just what we
Hmm.
all that was like step one. You're gonna learn how to throw well. You're gonna learn how to catch. You're gonna learn how to run routes. You're gonna learn how to block. You're gonna learn. So like growing up, we would play like football in the
Hmm.
backyard. My dad also played a little bit of baseball, so we played baseball. But I think I'm always that person where like where I'm always if we're doing an activity or something active, like I'm always the first person to jump in and be like, okay, let's go do it. And I always talk
Hmm.
to my girls and people that I know, and I always tell them like, don't be afraid. Like, because sometimes when I'm working with younger girls, I notice or just women in general that I work with, whether I'm coaching or whatever. And I notice sometimes they like sell themselves short athletically. And I always say, bring the athlete out. Don't be afraid to show the athlete within you. And I always tell them that. I'm like,
Love
you
that.
can, it might not look pretty, it might not look the best, but I'm like, get out there, embrace your athleticism because you have it. And I think that's something that I always try to share with other people is we could be playing something that I'm not comfortable in, but I'm going to get out there and get engaged and get involved and try my best and move and get active. But I would say there are a lot, if you asked my sister that, if she was on this podcast, like she would laugh and be like, yeah, there's a lot of, she's not good at so.
No, that's awesome. So the last question of the transition period before we get to your next act. Looking back, was there any lesson you learned or characteristic you developed from being a student athlete that helped you deal with the uncertainty of going into life afterward?
I think the idea of you get out what you put in. I think just being organized, learning the skill sets of, how to send proper emails, how to ask for a letter of recs, how to create a resume, how to, work in a team environment. I think that's huge. Like, I think learning how to work in a team environment is a lost art sometimes. But I think that was something that was really cool. But also learning how to deal with failure, because when you're when you play, as you all know, when you play for 4 years, like you're gonna go through so many like gut wrenching losses, failure moments, embarrassing moments, moments you could have done better, moments you're angry, moments your teammate yells at you, moments your coaches yell at you in the locker room. Like it's just like you experience a myriad of just like so many highs and lows. And so I think like for the average person who's maybe going through college and not playing sports, like they might experience, highs and lows. But I feel like each week when you're competing, it's like you go in this emotional high, then you have this low, or you have this moment, or you have this disappointment. And I think it just makes you really resilient mentally. And each year you prove to yourself, man, if I could get over that big failure or that big disappointment and the next year do better, then okay. And then you keep failing, but then also you start building. And I think I don't know if it was you talked about, but I'm like, competence leads to confidence. So like when you have a tough year and you encounter things that you are like, shoot, I never encountered that before, but going through it, coming onto the other side, you're like, well, I can do that. But then that leads to more confidence. And then when you feel, so I always have this cycle of like, if you walk into a room and you're doing something new or whatever it is, strive for competence, because, that leads to confidence. And it might take you 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is. But, I would say, and I'm passing this along to my kids, is like, I want them to first and feel competent and have the resources to feel competent, because as they feel competent, then they will be confident as a result of whatever they're doing. So, so I think those 4 years really allows you, or to 6 years that I was in school, is like you go through so many different things that builds this confidence of like, man, if I could get through that, I thought that was bad.
Yeah.
I thought that was bad. You know what I mean? And it's like, oh, well, if I can, fast forward 5 years and thought my life was over because this happened, because we lost her here, and then, still have this high and experience this amazing other thing, then man, maybe some things that come to me in life are not that bad. Like maybe I can always overcome and get through. And I think that's something that I always have had this belief of like, I can, no matter what situation I am put in, I can be successful. And no matter what situation I can put in, I can always find a way to learn and apply it and kind of like file it away in my toolbox is like something I can use later on, Each year you go through things and it's like you're learning how to overcome, but it's creating this incredible mental resiliency, but also this belief that the other side is always there. The light is always there in the tunnel. Like it's always going to like no matter what I'm going through and the tough moments that I'm going through, that on the other side of this, there's always going to be a more developed, a more competent, a more resilient Kirsten.
Those are some wise words. And I'm definitely stealing the competence leads to confidence.
You
So,
have to. If you're a coach, yes, 100%.
yeah.
100%. I think you asked me, Keaton, you're like, what are your kids? Or I don't know, we were talking about that. But I'm like, I was like, the first thing they're getting as a gift is a skateboard because they got to learn how to fall and get back up. The second thing they're going to do is gymnastics because they got to learn body awareness. And I was like, the third thing they're going to do, I was like, because I want them when they're 5, 6, and 7, 8, when they're entering the sports space, I want them to experience all the highs and lows so that when they have disappointment, they're not like, I'm not playing soccer anymore. Like they're like, oh, well, I fell off my skateboard a million times, but hey, I'm a great skateboarder. What's one bad game? You know what I mean?
Right.
And you're leading, so that way they always feel like I can achieve, I can do, I can
Yeah.
overcome. So I don't know if that was you we talked about with. Maybe it wasn't you. I don't know.
I believe it was Sydney because I heard that, and I believe she told me that you guys had talked about it. But I mean, it's a great strategy. I'm definitely stealing it from my kids.
Absolutely.
So, the first part of your next deck that I want to touch on is something we talk about often is a lack of competitive outlet in your next act. Have you found a replacement for that, or is that something that you still crave?
Yes, I have found a competitive outlet in my position currently. Even though it's more of an admin, like it's a little bit different than anything I've done before. But I would say I'm a builder, and I will own that. Like I like building things. If I have to maintain something or just de-escalate something, I do not enjoy my work. But if it's something that I am tasked with, the program or this is here and you have to do this here, I'm like 100% sign me up. Like if you come to me, Keaton, you're like, I need to build my sport facility, I'm like 100% sign me up. But if you come to me and say, I need you to run my sport facility, I'm like, no. Like, you know what I mean? So it's just like, that's kind of how I am. And I think like at Kentucky, it was like, the idea of building the team at Kentucky, taking it from a outside 100 to a top 15 team was like so appealing to me. When I was coaching at my first school at EKU, it was like we've never won. We've won, but like our team's good, but we have the potential, but like we could be better. It was a lot of like, what is the goal? We want to win a conference championship. So it was like, let's go win the conference championship. And we had one of the best seasons in program history, and we were undefeated in conference play. We got a conference championship. Like it was a whole thing. So it was like, okay, mission accomplished there. We built something special there. And then the coach at Kentucky, he told me the reason I hired you is because I saw what you built at Kentucky, and I feel like you can help me build this at Kennesaw State. And when we came to Kennesaw State, we were out of 304 Division I teams, we were 6 from the bottom.
Oh,
So like we were struggling a lot. And I remember he told me the reason I want you a part of this staff is because I see that you are really good at building things. And so. And so he was like, I think that is something that I admire about you most, and I think could be a really good asset. And so that's where it was like, okay, like what's the goal? They're like, we want to be a top 75 team. And I was like, okay, cool. We're 296, 75. Let's build. Like that's appealing to me. You know what I mean? And so then when my 4th season we got ranked in the top 75, it was like, okay,
nice.
like. Okay, so like now I'm like, okay, what's there to build now? So, and then when I took this position at AYTEF and where I am now, it was very much like, the ED had taken over, but like she never meant to be the ED. And so it was very much like we are here, but we want to be here. We just landed a new location. We were at this location for 10 years. We don't have any kids. We don't have any students. We're trying to go here, but this is where we currently are. And it was like, okay, I can work with that, right? I can build this, I can grow this. And so, and even now it's like, now that we've grown, I think by the first year we went from like 10 to 15 kids to 65 kids, like the first year.
Wow.
And so it was just like, and so now that and then I got promoted. I was the director of the program, and then now I'm the executive director. So like 8 months in, I got promoted to the executive director. So I was like, I don't know what an ED even does. Like I had no idea. Like what I have no idea.
Yeah.
And so but it was very much this idea of we're here, but we want to be here. And so I struggle with this idea of if the goal is not something that I feel like we like is really far out there, I'm like, I struggle. And so that is like I think that's the competitive energy in me, like coming out of just like, once we reach the mountain of success, then I get a little bored. I'm like, okay, like, okay, what's next? You know what I mean? And so I think that's where I've always like left different positions or jobs, because it's kind of like, okay, we met the goal. Either we continue, and that's something that they don't want to do. I'm like, okay, then I just need to go somewhere else where I want to build. So I think just embracing that idea of I now own that and know that I do better in situations where I'm kind of like the underdog, and there is a tangible goal that I can chase. And then once I get to that goal, it's kind of like, okay, I'm ready for the next thing. I'm ready to move on.
Yeah. Well, then that was evident in your time at Kentucky, and the reason why you went to Kentucky, you saw that exact same thing. It was something you could build, and then you got there, and then so it makes sense why you would see that in similar situations outside of sports, and being able to carry over that mentality of, okay, here's a mountain that nobody thinks that I or my team that I'm with can climb.
Yeah.
Let's climb it. And if we get there and there's not another mountain that we can climb, let me go find another mountain.
Yeah,
So that makes a lot of sense.
I think that you worded it perfectly. 100%.
And I think that, kind of that time that when you picking Kentucky for that reason, I think kind of leads into our next question a little bit. And, one of the biggest disservices that we can do as we kind of, continue through life is completely forget about everything in our first act and kind of leave that behind. But as you kind of move forward and into life, into your second act, how will you leverage your first act to help you as you continue here?
Oh man. So I would say first act is what gave me my dreams for the future. And then second act currently is the vehicle I am using to be able to apply the tools in my toolbox that I'm each time gathering to be able to throw them all together into building that one dream. And so that's kind of for me, like how I view it, of just like some of the things that transpired at Kentucky really gave me a dream for accomplishing for the future. So like, and we talked about that last night, kind of like my big dream. He knows my big dream is to go back to Ethiopia and have an impact there on some of the street kids that are there. But I would say now my second act is I see it as like preparing me so that when I get to that point to start really building and start pursuing that dream, the toolbox, the tools in my toolbox are already there. And I'm not having to go back and be like, oh, I've left the hammer, like it's somewhere else. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, no, like everything that you compiled over your first act, second act, third act, fourth act, fifth act, right? All led to this being able to build because the goal for me is I know my own mountain exists. Right now I'm climbing other people's mountains, and so I'll use your analogy, Keaton. Right now I feel like I'm climbing other mountains that I can put my flag on of like, okay, like then what's the next one? But I think after I climb multiple mountains, I'm going to get to the point where I'm going to set my eyes on my mountain, the one that the purpose that I have and the one that I was supposed to build. Yeah. To make a difference. And so for me, it's like, that's how I view like each job and each thing that I do. Is just like the toolboxes. I'm a big believer that each position that I'm in is for a purpose, and the purpose is so that my purpose can be fulfilled, because I was put on this earth for a very unique purpose that only I can fulfill. And so I like to think of it as the Lord is walking me through the different steps so that when it's time for me to walk in the purpose that He's laid out for me, that I feel, again, I'm competent going through all this thing, and I can confidently step into what's next and fully throw myself into it. So, but I would say with going to Ethiopia at Kentucky gave me a dream, and now just where I am now is helping me to helping me to prepare for fulfilling that dream.
Amen. That reminds me of kind of the concept of every phase of your life is going to require a different version of you. And while Matthew and I have talked about this, the concept of working while you wait, it seems like you're in a long waiting period before you get to your dream next act, but you're working in the space that you are currently, in all the spaces that you're going to be in before that dream next act, so that you develop into the person that you need to be, in order so that you're equipped, that your toolbox has everything you need in it to build what you were called to build. So that's such a great mindset to have, because there's going to be a lot of times where we're not in the most ideal situation with our work, or we're not going to be in what we're dreaming of doing, but we're there because I believe, and I'm sure you guys believe, we're there because we need to learn something that we wouldn't learn anywhere else. We need to know somebody that we wouldn't connect with anybody anywhere else, so that we can be prepared and have that competence that leads to confidence in order to get us to that mountain at the very end.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I know we kind of touched on it a little bit, and you don't have to go into it completely, because I know it's a very special dream to you, but would you mind sharing what your dream next act would be?
Well, right now it's in my belly, being a mother.
True.
Being a mother.
Very true.
Yeah, stepping into motherhood is the next chapter for our lives. And so not really sure how that's going to impact, what I'm doing right now. And so I'm leaving some space and leaving some flexibility for the unknown of it, walking in with like having a new baby, stepping into motherhood, all the different things like that and what that entails, and just like the highs and the lows, and just like how that's going to shape also, the dream, or just what I'm thinking, and how, what transpires there. So I want to leave some time and space for that. But I think creating my next dream act would be having the ability to create community and safe spaces for people. And so I think this really stems from this idea of I feel often that I struggled in my earlier years to like feel like I was a part of a community, and feel like I was a part of other people's community, or just feel like fit in, if that makes sense. And so I always kind of have this chip on my shoulder of just like how I felt in those moments. I don't want anyone else to feel that way. And so one temperature check that I always have is like, if I'm building community, creating safe community for people, youth, kids, families, whatever it is, then I'm in the right space. And so doing that as a coach is something, and I know that Matthew, you 100% probably agree with that. Like, you're creating this team or this culture, you're creating this group of people that are like, learning from each other, growing together. They see the worst, the good, the bad, and they're still sticking with it, and still, 100% forming as a team. But I would love to be able to step into something and learn something new. I think I want to continue growing my skill set and taking on new things. But anything that continues to either create a community for someone or people, or allow community to flourish, is like always the dream next act for me. And it could be in this field of nonprofit work. It could be a little bit different in other areas too. But that's kind of like where I try to like temperature check the jobs that I'm taking and the jobs that I'm going and working and like interviewing for, just looking at. Any job that takes me further away from that, I'm like, I don't love it. Any job that brings me closer to that, I'm like, this is something that I can get behind and do.
Yeah. Matthew, every question was like, how are we going to top that answer? And then the next question, all right, that's how. So with sports, there are defined goals and directions that help shape daily structure and actions. After that's over, finding that new guiding direction is one of the most difficult things that you have to replicate in your next act. And so we've seen that you have that new guiding direction. What is something that you do to kind of audit yourself to make sure that you're on the right path and you're course correcting whenever you feel like you need to do something different in order to maintain that climb on that mountain that you're on?
Man, I think I doubt myself pretty much every day. Like I wouldn't say, maybe the word is not doubt, but I always wonder, I doubt sometimes my strength to handle the load that I handle in some of these positions that I'm in, because there's so many times where I want to say like, I just want to take the easy route and be like, I just want life to feel easy. I don't want to have to make these decisions. I don't want to have to do these things. I don't want to have to fire this person. I don't want to have to do these different things. I just want to like go to a job where I just show up, sit on my laptop for, 6 hours and go home. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I just like, I question like, do I have the engine, do I have the work ethic? Do I have the resilience to keep tackling things that I feel like have zero to little reward in the like short term?
Yeah.
And so I think like I sit here and I just say like every week is like kind of like I'm questioning like, oh my goodness, like is this, right now in the nonprofit space, it's a very thankless job. It's very tiring.
Yep.
It's very mentally draining. It's most days are a lot of grind with a lot of no's, and then like you get like 20 no's and then like one yes, and you're like, oh, okay, I can go another 20 no's. Do you know what I mean? But on that like 17, 18, 19 no, you're just like, am I cut out for this? Like, am I in the right space? Can I take another no? Can I do this? Like, can I do these different things? And I think when I start feeling that way of like, can I think it's kind of like a gut check of like, Kirsten, like, you didn't put yourself here, I did, like, and so when I start thinking really selfishly of like, this is unfair for me, or this is not feeling good for me, for like, and it's kind of like okay, like,
Yeah.
okay, you know what I mean? Like, the reason you got that yes was not because of you anyway. It wasn't some speech you said. It wasn't some amazing pitch that you had. Like, it wasn't anything. It was just that, this was something that was given to you in this moment. And like, so I think like on the flip side of all of this, like I question all the time, like, do I have the energy to reach my mountain? And do I have the sustainable energy? Am I going to sustain? Am I going to burn out and be like, and settle and be like, yeah, it's not worth it. Like, or am I going to keep pushing? And I question myself a lot with that. And I question myself like, oh, when your family comes, are you going to just give up? Are you going to fade off? Be like, my family's here and my kids, did this and that, and et cetera. Or are you going to always remember, that kind of going back to what we were talking about in the first segment of just like, I've been given a gift, and there's something that I know that I've been given to connect with people extremely well and to be able to put things into action and build things. And I think that's a gift that I've been given. And so it's just like, what are you going to give that gift away because it feels really difficult, and kind of like put that gift under the table and take it out only every once in a while? Or are you going to take it out every day and utilize it in the way that it was meant to be utilized? And so truthfully, I think that's something that I struggle with. I have these amazing dreams that I'm like, that I get so like emotional just thinking about them, of like, this is what I think I was put on this earth to accomplish. Then I worry like, Kirsten, are you going to succumb to your own self and your own like energy of like, are you going to succumb to this idea of I'm self-sufficient and can do this on my own and then burn out and never accomplish? Or are you going to rely on me throughout all of this to sustain and to continue fueling the engine and fueling the fire?
Yeah.
So I haven't figured it out yet, truthfully. I'm still, every day we're still plugging away and still figuring out how to make sure that my energy and my passion stays high for people and for serving.
Yeah. No, it's one of the...
And I think that's... go ahead, Keaton.
I was just going to say the sustainability part of that, when we really get into it, because athletics, we have 4 years of high school, 4 years of college. So we can see the end, we can see the finish line in both of those phases. And then when we get out into a larger dream outside of sports like that, it's very difficult to see not only the path, but also the finish line, because like you said, a lot of times we don't know what the path is until we start taking steps. We can't see the next door open until we get to the one door first. So the sustainability of that, it's much more difficult to not get burnt out when you have to sustain it for that much longer.
I also think it's important for people to hear that, like, you don't have everything figured out, and like it's not just a easy step-by-step checklist or here's a book about what you're supposed to be doing. Like it's okay to try some stuff and it doesn't work out, and it's okay to kind of live and learn and trial by fire a little bit. I think that's an important aspect, especially as people kind of transition, out of their first act, as Keaton kind of mentioned, where things are very structured, and kind of just, you got to try some stuff sometimes, and sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't, and that's okay. That's life.
Absolutely.
And I also think that leads us into our next question actually pretty well. You're killing this. Maybe you should be hosting.
Yeah, right.
But how has your definition of success changed after, kind of post tennis as you've kind of gone into your next act here?
I think tennis is a very like individual sport. And so a lot of your success is defined by what you can do individually on your own. And this next act, what I'm doing now, so I run a sport youth nonprofit, basically taking tennis and education into under-resourced, underserved communities and giving access to sport at either free or low cost, so that there's no barrier to entry or access for youth of any color, social and economic status, background, to be able to engage and explore the sport of tennis. And so that's what I do full time, is making sure that the resources and the budget and the vision is there to make sure that right now operate in Marietta, which is predominantly a Hispanic community. But making sure that there is absolutely no barrier or, there's nothing that could deter a young person from saying I can play tennis and be successful. And so that's what I'm currently doing now. And I think like it's been really cool to like give back this sport that like gave me so much. It's been really humbling to like see kids like be successful. Like one of our 10 and under junior team tennis teams that we formed, and it was like a co-ed team, and it was 8 players, but they played in their league in their district in Cobb County, ended up winning their like district, go to the state qualifier, qualify for state. And I remember the state was in Macon, Georgia, which is like an hour and a half from where we are. And I remember for a lot of them, it was their first time even staying in a hotel. And they were just like at the hotel pool, like having fun. And we all went to dinner together. And then they qualify for sectionals, which is in Mobile. It was just like this crazy story this year. It was absolutely insane of these like group of kids. But for me, it was just like a lot of the kids on the team, I taught them like tennis. Like when I met them back in 2022, they had never played tennis. They didn't know what tennis was. And and to see them like fast forward 3 years, like have success and have these moments of like, this is my first time staying in a hotel room. Like, you know what I mean? It's just like, it hits, it's just a whole different type of scenario. So I think like success back then was always more so like the next pay raise, the next this, the next that. And so for me now, success is how well am I using the things that I have been given and the gifts that I've been given to better the spaces around me. And that's kind of like a burden that I feel like I carry of just like, I don't want to like, for me, I think like, I feel like there's this call in my life. And I'm like, I don't want to leave this earth feeling like I didn't unturn like every single rock that I was meant to unturn. And so it's kind of like this, like really, it's almost like this like thing that like haunts me. I think about it often. It's just like, I'm a perfectionist too. I don't know if y'all picked that up on on this phone call.
Yep.
So I'm like, everything that everything has to be like, I feel like nothing's ever good enough and nothing is ever going to be good enough. But it also, in a way, it's like my biggest Achilles heel, but also it keeps me so like always like pushing of like, there's more to discover, there's more to do. Like, how can I utilize 100% of everything that I was meant to be? And it's really kind of like, I can't get rid of it. Like, it's just something that's in me. I don't really know how to explain it. Like, a bunch of my siblings have the same thing. So maybe it's just like a genetic thing. I don't know what it is. But we talk about this often. There's an extra gear within us that's just like, does not shut off. Yeah. Like, ever. And so for me, it's just like, how do I take the path that I was meant to walk and walk it extremely well. That's success for me.
I think that's maybe the best definition of success I've ever heard in my life. I mean, that's a lot of times we hear people redefine success as I want to be happy, which there's nothing wrong with being happy. Like that's a great it's a great aspiration to have, but there's something different in what you were saying in terms of there's going to always be something in me that won't shut off until it may not ever shut off, but it's constantly just going after how can I help people and use the gifts that I have in the space that I'm in right now. And I think that's definition of success is so impactful. Like it just, there's going to be such a ripple effect in that. It's going to be really cool to see. So that was awesome.
We ban the word happy from our house. We don't use the word happy because Isaac, it started off kind of a joke of just like, you know, what's the phrase, like, do what makes you happy. And so now it's like, I'm always like, no, it's not about what makes you happy. It's about what it's right. Like, you know what I mean? Happiness is just a feeling, like, you know, whatever. And so now when I'm like, you know, Isaac always jokes around and is like, oh, whatever makes you happy, do what makes you happy, like as a joke. And I'm like, oh, I hate that. Like, that's not like, I that phrase for me just grinds my gears because I think like I hear that so much of like, do whatever makes you happy. And I'm over there with my second gear, like, but what is right? Like, what, like, I don't want what makes you happy. Like, what makes you happy could be the wrong thing. You know what I mean? So I struggle with that phrase like a lot, and he knows it. So he always like says, do what makes you happy, Kirsten. I'm like, okay.
No, it's a great point. So it's been phenomenal. I'm gonna have to make it 2 parts for sure, but in the best way possible. Like because there's gonna be nothing to cut because like there's no fluff in this. It's all just straight heat. So what's something you were able to develop into your identity as a player that you carried over into your identity as a professional?
I'm going to say this, the importance of representation, like how I'm presenting myself, putting my best foot forward, right? Like I will spend 6 to 10 extra hours on a report just to make sure there is absolutely no typo, like someone's going to read it, like, you know what I mean? Like, and I think like making sure that every single time I'm presenting myself, it is putting my best foot forward. And I think that's something that I learned as an athlete too, because you know you're in a lot of different spaces and things like that. But like, I think that's something that I still to this day, like it really drives me crazy because I'm just like, I spend so much time on things that should take way longer because I'm just like, you know what, I'm not going to submit it until like I will have a deadline and I will do the grant or do the whatever it is, and I will literally have it sit for like a week and just every day review, like just making sure, okay, there's nothing I could have said better, nothing I should have done, like, you know, whatever it is. And it really just, it really makes me upset I'm like that way. But I would just say like the importance of representation and making sure that, because I always tell my employees and my team, I'm like, like someone's always watching like what you're doing. Yep. And, you know, that's something that I think people don't really recognize and understand is that, you know, you could be doing the most meaningful, like I have like part-time employees and I'm like, guys, like, you know, your job is like 6 hours a week, but better believe I'm watching what you're doing. Like, you know what I mean? Like this is important, you know? And so I think, and I always say, like, you never know, like, how many people pass over you because when you thought no one was watching you, you were just goofing off and doing whatever, right? And I was like, you never know that, you know, there could be someone that you never thought you would catch their eye, or you never thought that they would use you in this way. But at the same time, you showed up late, you did this, you did that, or you were just not paying attention, and they looked at you for an opportunity and they completely bypassed you because they saw you when you thought they weren't looking, you know?
Yeah.
So I think this idea of just representation is something that I try to like continue on now and because a lot of my team and my staff are younger than me. So I try to really hone on the fact of, okay, like, you know, when you're doing something, like give me 100%, like work ethic is king in my world, you know, like if you have a strong work ethic, I will promote you 10 times over talent if you have a strong work ethic. So, I think that's something that I carried through.
Yeah.
What has been your favorite part about life that you've gotten to experience that you weren't able to experience in your first act?
Gosh, that's a really good question. I'm trying to think through like between the two. I'm gonna be like really vulnerable and say, for me, this is like I'll say the negative that I've carried into from, and maybe this is completely different. I don't want to go in, but the negative I think I've carried into from first act is to second act is because I'm now like my own like boss or like CEO. My biggest struggle is like work life boundaries. For me, I think in my first act, I had way more personal, like my community was larger. Like my personal satisfaction was much higher in terms of like my community, friends, family, all the different things like that. And I think now I'm learning. I think from my first act to like being a college coach, like I think when I met Isaac, I had never been outside like the city of, like, because in Atlanta there's a lot of suburbs in Atlanta, and so I was living in Smyrna, which is a suburb of Atlanta, but I was coaching in Kennesaw. And I think for the first 2 years of being a college coach, I went to Kennesaw every morning and came back every night and just like went to bed. Like it was like I didn't know anything about the city, but like nothing about where I lived. And I remember when I met Isaac, he took me to the Chattahoochee River. He wouldn't know what I'm talking about. And I remember just like staying there and be like, this thing exists in Georgia. Like, what the heck? Like,
Right.
what is this space? Like, he went to like the Chattahoochee Coffee Company. And I was just like, what is this? Like, what is this? Like, how does this? I think it wasn't until I met Isaac that I actually like got to get out and do things and like explore my city. So like, I think like this idea of, I think I enjoyed myself more in my first act, and then my second act I'm learning again too now, but I think for the first 3 to 4 years it was just all second act, working that
Yeah.
neglected my personal life, neglected so many different things that I think we were never meant to neglect as people, and we need these things. And so that was probably like one of the negatives things that I took into my second act, was like a working addiction of just like work because I'm always looking for the next step, the next opportunity, and not just being like super present where I was. And then positively, I would say maybe Isaac is the positive, because I mentioned him and he's the reason I stepped out of it.
True.
But yeah, I don't know. I think having the support system is way better now than and not doing everything by myself and alone, and feeling like it was up to me to make decisions. I couldn't have someone I could like bounce things off of. And I think just having the support system of like, I can come home to this space and feel very like the world can beat me up, but I can come home to this space of just like, I feel valued, I feel supported, I feel loved, I feel enough, I feel present. Is really like a game changer. You know what I mean? I know, Keen, you're about to get married, so like you'll understand that as well. But like, I don't know about Matthew if you're married or not, but
Just married.
oh yeah, so you understand this too.
July. Yep.
So I think like just having the support system and is really, really good. And also I think mentorship is something as well that I didn't utilize at all in my first act. And having people like pour into you, and having the ability to discuss failures and discuss problems and discuss where you want to go and where you want to be. I think I've had some really cool mentors in my second act that have really like changed my life. And I think if I would go back to my first act, I would say lean into some of those people that reached out that you were kind of like, I don't have time, like to lean into that more. You know what I mean? Like get some people who can really put your life back into perspective, and put your world back together in a sensible manner for you and help you do that. So those would probably might be like my two. One negative, one positive.
Yeah, that's real. I mean, we haven't ever had a negative side of things, but it's real, because there are negative sides of things that you don't get to experience, that you experience in your second act or your next act that you don't in your first. So before we go to our final two questions, just want to say that I appreciate you a lot for this time, but also just want to take some time to recognize and acknowledge you for one, the incredible accomplishments that you were able to have and do in your first act of tennis. It's very unique and very uncommon, and it was a huge part of your identity, and you're continuing to use that for a lot of good. So I want to acknowledge you for that as an accomplishment, but also for all of the people that you're going to impact in the future. And it's very evident that you have a very high calling on your life, and it seems like you're doing a lot to be obedient in that, and doing all of that and hosting the small group that we have and being able to build that relationship with Sydney and I over the past couple of years has been something that has blessed us for sure. And just want to acknowledge and thank you for that.
No, it's one, I just want to say thank you for having me on, and even just talking through this has been amazing. And I would say Isaac and I have enjoyed getting to know you and Sydney and getting to know you better. And I think even just in our own interactions, just the power of community, and how I'm on this podcast because of community. I get to meet you, Matthew, through Keaton. And actually, I have another person who I think will be awesome for this. He's my chiropractor, and I'm like, Keaton needs to know who that is, because if he has the dreams that he has, knowing a good chiropractor is essential for these things. But he was a former football player, et cetera, et cetera. But I was thinking about that today. But I just appreciate you all taking the time I want to ask really good questions that I've never been asked before in my life. So thank you all for letting me think through some of those things. And it's just nice to be reminded of where you've been and how far you've come, and what you're going towards, but also that your story is powerful, whether it's small, whether it's uneventful, whether it's, amazing, or really, a roller coaster. It's still your story. And thank you for creating space to share, for other people to share their stories. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, no, definitely appreciate that, because that's honestly, that's everything that we want this to be. And especially having gone through it ourselves, it's been so cool you're the 16th guest, and I can't wait to get to the next 16 guests, and then the next 16 guests after that. And then I've gotten to hang out with Matthew a lot more over the past year or so because we've been able to do this. So definitely appreciate those kind words.
Nice.
And it's people like you that allow us to get to do what we do, because you get to share your cool story. And obviously this is the first time we've met, but from what Keaton's told me, from just listening to you talk today, I can tell you're an incredible human being, obviously with a lot of athletic ability that just happens to be attached to that. But the ability for us to try to share your story and to help, people that are, maybe need a little bit of help, or just, are always looking to learn. I know Keaton and I are just looking to learn sometimes and just hear from other people and their experiences. But we wouldn't be able to do this and kind of generate this community without people like yourself. So we're extremely grateful for you as well.
All right. So the last two questions that we ask every single one of our guests, I'll ask the first one, and then Matthew will close us out with the second one. The first question is, what does a life well lived mean to you?
One with zero stress. I'm just kidding. That would be my ideal, one that has zero stress. But I know that stress is a part of everything, but just the time, getting our time back. Our time. And I think busyness is our biggest thief, and busyness is the biggest obstacle and such a big distraction. And I think a life well lived for me is a life that I have time to actually do and fulfill the prompts that I have, or just go for a coffee, or go for a lunch, or take 2 hours at the Chattahoochee River Trail because I want to, or you know what I mean? Just a life that doesn't feel hurried or rushed or frantic. That's for me, a life well lived, and a life there I get to create memories and slow down. And right now I think it's very telling that I'm in a very stressful, high, busy season, because I'm that's the first thing that popped in my head of I just more time. And just being able to be more present and not always look to what's to come, but just like be more in the moment. And I'm awful at that, like truthfully, like I'm awful at being in the moment and just being like content in the moment.
It's difficult.
And so for me, it's just like I dream. When I see people who are not hurried, when I see people who are just like, oh, well, I'll take a 2 hour lunch break and just come back, like they won't miss them. I'm just like, how can I be you? Like, you know what I mean? Like, how can I like experience this life that y'all live? Because I just like my head is just it's wild to me. I'm definitely just in a different breed, but I envy people who stop and chat for 45 minutes just because. Like, I'm the person who's like looking at my watch. Okay, Keaton, like it's 45 minutes. You've been it enough. It's time
Right.
to, like, we got to get this thing moving. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of how I am. And so
Yeah.
I think just a life that's slowing down so that you can actually lean into and listen and hear, the steps, or hear from the Lord, like what are you supposed to do, And I think busyness, and we get so distracted, and there's a lot of things going on that we miss 99% of the cues we're supposed to hear, you know what I mean? Because we're just like all the time, So I think that would be like amazing. And I'm preaching to myself. Like, I think a life well lived would be one that's not unhurried, not rushed, and time doesn't feel like something that's escaping. It feels like something that just is.
Yeah. I mean, it's in the same vein of Mitch's sermon on Sunday, of like getting out of I just want to be less tired and be less busy, and having those dreams like you do to point us toward that and what we're called to do. So
segueing into our last question here, when it's all said and done, how do you want to be remembered?
Oh man.
we'll save the two hardest hitting ones for last.
Yeah, these are really, really good. A couple of things have like popped into my head, but I'm like, I'm awful at these things, so I probably won't be remembered by these things. I think one I want to be, so one is more personal, but like I think remembered as, one thing that's really important for me is I want to be remembered as like a present mom for my kids. That's something that I would love to be remembered by, and really be able to go down to their level, and nothing's too silly, or nothing's too like, oh, like can't do this, or what do you know what I mean? Like, I really want to have that memory and create a safe space for them to feel like, they can come home and bring their significant others, and like it just really create like a home full of kids and friends and whoever else wants to join in the fun and the group. But then, I would say I would love to be remembered as someone who stopped and listened, but I'm like awful at that. I'm terrible at that. Like,
got a lot of time left to fix that, though.
Yeah, exactly. So I think like just someone who like in someone's like most vulnerable moments, I sat with them and just sat there and listened to them, and I didn't rush. I didn't speak out of turn. I didn't say the wrong thing. I just like held my words and just listened, and I didn't put like say, oh, I would do that or whatever, you know what I mean? So I think that's something that I would love to be remembered as someone that, when I was down or out, or when I was going through something, that Kirsten took the time to just sit with me and be there for me. So I think that also goes with this idea of like creating a less busy life. You know what I mean? I think we are our own worst enemies in that. But that's really the top two things that come to mind for me.
I would say that'd be a great way to be remembered. I mean, those are two great things that are gonna have impact way beyond our time here. So, I agree. That brings us to the end. Kirsten, thank you so much for your time. Is there anything that you want? I have an idea, but is there anything that you want to plug before we wrap up?
I would say if you are in the Atlanta area and you want to get involved with youth sports, please check out our organization at aytef.org. That's Atlanta Youth Tennis Education Foundation. If you are someone who wants to get involved in the work of young people, youth, and volunteering, getting to see what sport can do and the powerful tool that it is and the vehicle it is for positive youth development, definitely check us out, and really learn more about on our website what we do and how we do it and how you can support, whether it's through donation, whether it's through volunteering, whether it's through resources that you have or opportunities that you have, that could coincide with our work and what we do. Please don't hesitate to reach out.
Yeah, that's awesome. If you're still listening, thank you so much. We appreciate you more than you know. If you're not listening, you won't hear this anyway. But make sure to go re-listen to this and support the Atlanta Youth Tennis and Education Foundation. And again, Kirsten, thank you so much. This is going to be so much fun to re-listen to and edit back. But for myself, Keaton Hall, my host, Matthew Roop, let's make sure the best is still yet to come.